Welcome to Echoes of Faith, where stories of hope, resilience, and grace inspire us to find the light in every challenge.
Today's story, Haunted Return, follows Daniel, a soldier returning home with scars that are invisible to most, but deeply etched in his heart. Struggling with PTSD, Daniel faces an internal war that feels as relentless as the battles he left behind. In his journey to find peace, Daniel discovers the power of prayer, community, and the courage to open up his heart to healing. Join us as we walk alongside him, finding comfort in the quiet strength that only faith can provide. Daniel sat alone at the edge of his bed, staring at the floor. His hands, calloused from years of service in the military, rested heavily on his knees. It had been months since he returned home from his last tour, but he couldn't leave the war behind. The sights, the sounds, the endless barrage of gunfire, the screams of his fellow soldiers, it all haunted him every time he closed his eyes. He had been diagnosed with PTSD, but that label didn't do justice to what he felt. It was more than just memories. It was as if the war was still happening inside him, an endless battle with no escape. Nights were the worst. He would wake up in a cold sweat, his heart racing, his body tensed as though still waiting for the next threat to come. Sleep had become a rare luxury, and even when it came, it offered no rest. His wife Emily had been patient, more patient than he deserved, Daniel thought. She had done her best to support him, to understand, but even she couldn't fully grasp the weight he carried. He knew it hurt her, watching him slip further away, shutting her and their two young children out. Every time she reached out to comfort him, to help, he pulled away. He didn't want her to see his pain. One morning, after another sleepless night, Emily sat beside him at the breakfast table. She was quiet for a while, simply watching him. Finally, she spoke. "Daniel, I think you should try something different," she said, her voice soft but firm. "You've been carrying this weight for so long, and you don't have to do it alone." Daniel looked at her, tired and defeated. "What do you mean?" "There's a support group at the church, for veterans. It's small, but I've heard from a few people that it helps." Emily reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "Please, just give it a try." Daniel hesitated. He had never been the kind of man to open up to strangers. The idea of sitting in a circle talking about his feelings didn't sit right with him, but Emily's eyes, filled with concern and hope, made him reconsider. "All right," he said quietly. "I'll go." The following evening, Daniel found himself standing in front of the small community church. It wasn't anything fancy, just a modest building with white walls and a wooden cross above the door. He felt awkward, out of place as he stepped inside. The room where the group met was simple. A few chairs were arranged in a circle and a handful of people were already seated, chatting quietly. A middle-aged man with kind eyes and a worn Bible in his lap greeted Daniel as he walked in. "Hi, I'm Pastor Jim," the man said, extending his hand. "You must be Daniel. We're glad to have you." Daniel nodded and shook his hand, still unsure. He took a seat at the edge of the circle, feeling the eyes of the others on him. But as the group began to share their stories, something shifted. These men and women, some older, some younger, were just like him. They had seen the same horrors, carried the same burdens. For the first time in a long time, Daniel felt like he wasn't alone. One man, an older veteran named Frank, shared how his faith had helped him find peace after decades of struggling. Another woman, Carla, spoke about losing her husband in combat and how prayer had become her anchor in the storm of grief. When it was Daniel's turn to speak, he hesitated. The words felt heavy on his tongue, but something inside him urged him to open up. I don't know how to fix this," Daniel said, his voice low. "I can't sleep. I can't stop thinking about everything that happened. I feel like I'm still there, you know? Like I never really left." Pastor Jim nodded, his expression understanding. "That's a feeling a lot of us know all too well," he said. "But here, we don't expect anyone to have all the answers. We're here to share, to pray, and to help each other find peace." Daniel wasn't sure how much peace could come from talking, but he stayed. For the next hour, the group prayed together. It wasn't a formal prayer, no long, complicated speeches. It was simple, heartfelt. Each person offered their own quiet words, asking for strength, healing, and peace. At the end of the meeting, Pastor Jim pulled Daniel aside. "I know this isn't easy," he said, placing a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "But you've taken the first step. Keep coming, keep praying. You'd be surprised how much power there is in a simple prayer." Over the next few weeks, Daniel returned to the group. At first, it was just for Emily's sake, but slowly, something began to change. He didn't feel as distant, as numb. The prayers, those small moments of asking for peace, started to work their way into his heart. The nightmares didn't stop entirely, but they came less often. And when they did, Daniel found himself praying in the quiet hours of the night, asking for the strength to get through them. Months passed, and while Daniel's journey wasn't without its struggles, he continued to attend the group, continued to pray. Slowly, the weight he had carried for so long began to lift. He and Emily grew closer again, and the walls he had built between himself and his family started to crumble. He began to laugh more, to engage with his children, to feel like the man he used to be, not the same but stronger in a new way. One Sunday morning, as the sun streamed through the windows of their home, Daniel sat with Emily and their children around the breakfast table. The light felt warm on his skin, and for the first time in years, Daniel felt at peace. It wasn't the absence of pain, but the presence of something deeper, hope. As they bowed their heads to say grace, Daniel closed his eyes and whispered a silent prayer, not for miracles or quick fixes, but simply for the strength to keep moving forward, one step at a time. And in that quiet moment, he knew he wasn't alone. Remember, in life we all face battles that weigh on our hearts and minds. Whether it's trauma, grief, or the constant pressures of daily life, the burden can feel overwhelming. But just like Daniel learned, peace is possible, even in the hardest of times. The peace that God offers isn't always about changing our circumstances, it's about changing what's within us. It's a peace that goes beyond understanding, a stillness in the storm that can only come from faith. Philippians 4:7 reminds us that when we pray and trust in God, His peace will guard our hearts and minds. It doesn't mean the struggles disappear, but it means that we don't have to face them alone. God's presence is with us, offering a comfort and peace that the world cannot give. Just as Daniel found healing in prayer and community, we too can find peace when we surrender our worries to God.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. Remember, no matter what fires we face, faith will always carry us through. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Be sure to leave a comment. Subscribe for more stories that inspire and uplift. This is Echoes of Faith, where every story brings hope. If today's story moved you, be sure to discover more heartfelt journeys in the Echoes of Faith series and uplift your spirit. Don't miss out on the next chapter. There's always more to uncover.